All I can say is that I'm alive because of the care I got from Memorial. Well, I'm Kenneth Buchanan. I was raised here in Marietta. I go by my nickname Bob. Most everyone knows me by that. And I had not been a proponent of the vaccines. I spent 12 years on the corporation board for Selby General Hospital. So I met a great many fine people, and many of the doctors are close friends of mine, one of which is one of my best friends is Jeremy Waters. And Dr. Waters always tried to encourage me to get the vaccine, but I was one of those that was somewhat reluctant. It was in October of 2021, and I serve on a great many government boards. One of the boards that I serve on is for conservation in the state of West Virginia. One of the individuals that attended that meeting had COVID and was friendly with me, and that was it. Now, for the rest of that week, for 3 days, I had symptoms that were just like a cold. Brandon got it as well, my son, or at least he showed symptoms of a cold. But I had no fever. I never had any sore throat, no vomiting, nothing that would be indications of flu or what have you, but I was just tremendously weak and cold. And apparently my voice must have changed, because when Crystal my wife, would call from Texas, she continued to say that you need to go see Jeremy. And I said, no, I'm fine. It's okay. So she had our neighbor, she called him, who's a good friend of mine, come up with a COVID test, which he did that afternoon. About 1 o'clock he came and he said, let's just run this test. And so he gave me the test and it was positive. And so I knew, and of course Crystal and both Joe said, hey, you need to call your doctor and make arrangements to go for the antibodies, which I did. And Jeremy's team made arrangements for me to go to Memorial for the antibodies in the afternoon, about 5:30. I took Brandon over to Joe's house, my son, and he was going to stay there while I went up. Well, Joe says, are you sure you can drive? I said, yeah, I think I can make it. But, and I did. I drove on up to the hospital. When I got to the garage and the antibody center was right there, I sat in the truck for a little bit because I was wore out from driving. And I finally got the strength to get out of the truck and walk over to the little glass enclosure. I saw a chair inside. When I got to the chair, that was as far as I could make it. And I sat down, and I don't know how to say anything other than the fact that I lost use of my legs. I couldn't move my legs. I couldn't get up, couldn't stand. At the time, I only used one cane because I've had some hip trouble. But I just had no strength to go. And I couldn't speak. And I sat there in that chair, and there were several people that came out that apparently had had the treatments. And I tried desperately to speak, but to get their attention, and I couldn't. All I could do was bang my head against the wall. And I would do that, and I'm sure that they thought, what in the world have we got here in the hospital now? But it was, I was sweating profusely. I had worn a jacket. It was chilly. I was cold though, and it was soaking wet. And finally, a nurse come out and she said, "Are you one of our patients?" And I can't recall that I could say yes, but I did indicate by shaking my head. Maybe I even banged it on the wall as I'd been doing. But she came back immediately with a wheelchair and was able to get me in the wheelchair and take me into your center. And whenever I got in there was a lady with brown hair. I couldn't remember who she was, couldn't even recognize her at the time. But I remember her saying, "This is our Bob, what happened to that smile? He looks terrible, we've got to get him to emergency." And that's when it all started. And I remember the doctor saying to the crew that was in the emergency room, "Hurry, because we don't have much time left." Before I knew it, I was in the COVID ICU unit, and I spent 10 days there. And Crystal, of course, couldn't come to the COVID unit, and they were phenomenal. I mean, they basically called her at 6:30 every morning, 6:30 every night. Not just the nurses, but the doctors as well, and kept her apprised of what was going on. And it was pretty devastating. But I finally went home after 10 days. And I probably shouldn't have, because I wasn't strong. I maybe, and they talked about maybe you should go to a rehabilitation center. I fought that like tooth and nail. And my wife said, "Okay, we'll get him home." Crystal was taking Brandon to school. He goes to an adult learning. And when she left at 10 in the morning, 10:30, I had something happen. I could see white dots and black dots, and then all of a sudden the whole room went white, and it was about 20 minutes, and then my vision came back. She and Brandon didn't get back until about 4:30 that day, but whenever she came in, she called the squad, and the guy said, "Bob, we can't get your blood pressure. You pretty much have to go." And so I agreed to it, and off to the hospital we came again. And what had occurred was that the blood clots had formed that time and had gone through the heart into the lungs. And I have congestive heart failure, so we were pretty concerned, or they all were concerned about that. Maybe I survived this whole thing because I never really knew how sick I was. The doctor went out and sat down with Crystal and said, "Had you not got him here, he may not have made it." There were many times that I thought about, I wish I had gotten the vaccine whenever I had the opportunity, but I didn't do that. And I'm sure I wasn't the model patient, but I wanted them to understand how much my family and I really appreciated all the doctors and the nurses. I've always had an allegiance I said I was on the corporation board with Selby, and everything I've ever had done's been at Memorial. And the doctors that I knew from the board and have become associated with, I trust them. And I trust Jeremy and his dad, Gary, they were just as close to me as I could be. We have a ranch. We don't have horses anymore, but I'm back. I can mow some. I enjoy being on my tractors, and I was a competition pistol shooter, hunter, outdoorsman. I haven't gotten back to that. I don't have the strength to stand and not be maybe a danger to someone else, but I'm getting there. So it's getting stronger, and I'm doing better.